So WrestleMania is this weekend, and because of the way ESPN's pushing it, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. Again, like, I'm the target audience. I like it. But ESPN's pushing it, right? And ESPN's financially vested to push it because ESPN has a relationship with WWE and TKO, right? This is probably the most culturally mainstream WrestleMania of all time for that reason. So I feel like we can legitimately do a wrestling segment here on the show. Not that we haven't in the past, but this is really, if there were a year to do it, it would be this one. I was thinking about what to do. How do we want to do it? And I settled on my Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania matches. As someone who has seen every match of every WrestleMania, I am 1 year older than WrestleMania. WrestleMania 1, 1984. I'm born in 1983. I've seen all of them. The first Mania I remember watching is 6, which is in Toronto with Hogan and Warrior. The first WrestleMania that I watched from start to finish, and I was obsessed with it, was 7 with Hogan Slaughter in the main event. I've seen it all. I read the dirt sheets. I was an internet smark when it first started to be a thing. I am a original member, a day one member of the IWC, which people use as a dirty term now. Like, the internet wrestling community now is just wrestling fans. So I always laugh at the IWC. Like, it's not the IWC. It's just wrestling fans now. So here is the indisputably correct Mount Rushmore of WrestleMania matches. And before I give it to you, the honorable mentions. The matches that just missed my Mount Rushmore. In no particular order. WrestleMania 10. Intercontinental title ladder match. Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon, the late great Scott Hall. Razor would win that one. Michaels would beat him in a ladder match or a couple years later at SummerSlam. Epic ladder match for the Intercontinental title that changed the business. And the memorable spot is Shawn Michaels with the splash off the top of the ladder, which never happened at that point in American wrestling. That's the first honorable mention. I was in Miami for WrestleMania 28, and that featured 2 matches that make my honorable mentions list. Number 1 is the main event of Rock versus Cena, which is the first Rock-Cena match, where everyone was rooting for The Rock, including me. And when Rock won the match, people were literally jumping up and down in the aisles. Like your favorite team won the World Series on a walk-off home run in Game 7. Also that night is the greatest false finish in the history of professional wrestling. It's Undertaker versus Triple H when the streak was still alive, with Shawn Michaels as a special referee in Hell in a Cell. Michaels super kicks Undertaker into a pedigree, and Undertaker kicks out. And I remember looking at the friends I was with at that WrestleMania, and we all looked at each other when Undertaker kicked out and started laughing because it was so awesome. That makes the list. Macho Man Randy Savage, and Ricky Steamboat, Intercontinental title, WrestleMania 3, has to make the list. A perfect professional wrestling match. Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar in the main event of WrestleMania 31. Now, everyone remembers that match for Seth Rollins cashing in and winning the belt and swinging it over his head at the end. Even before Rollins cash-in, that is the best Reigns-Lesnar match by far and is a awesome professional wrestling match. Reigns-Lesnar from 31. I feel terrible not including any of the TLC matches, tables, ladders, and chairs, because they are truly epic and changed the business. They are all great. They just missed the list for me of the 2 that happened at WrestleMania. They just missed, but they are legendary, and I love them. And the first one out, like NCAA tournament, first one out, I hate not including it, is Cody Roman Reigns WrestleMania 40 a couple years ago. When Cody finishes the story, and The Rock, and Undertaker, and Cena, and Rollins dressed in the Shield gear, and Cody wins, ending Roman's 1,316-day reign as champion. That match is the first one out for me. Cody and Roman Reigns in the WrestleMania 40 main event. So now we get to my list. And I think you can tell already here, and you better you bet on this Thursday, Nick Kostos and you, that for me, And look, we can all consume the art form differently and like different things, and it's totally okay. Some people like pepperoni on their pizza, others like sausage. Some people like Coke, some people like Pepsi, some people like chocolate, some people like vanilla. You are welcome to like what you like. For me, what's more important in a great pro wrestling match? The actual wrestling or the story being told? For me, it's the story. And that's why Macho Steamboat doesn't make my Mount Rushmore. You can argue, with the exception of one of these matches, it's the best wrestling match on the list. But I like the stories of the other matches better. The first match on my Mount Rushmore, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, I Quit match, WrestleMania 13 in Chicago, which features Austin passing out with the bloody face in the sharpshooter, refusing to quit, and featured a double turn where Bret Hart enters that match as the babyface, Austin enters as the heel, and by the time the match is over, the crowd hates Bret and loves Austin, launching Bret Hart's awesome heel run, which culminated in the Montreal Screwjob at Survivor Series 97, and launched Stone Cold Steve Austin into absolute megastardom as a babyface. And the match itself is legendary, and the ending is legendary. That is induction number 1. Number 2, the match that Cody Rhodes calls the greatest pro wrestling match ever. Rock Hogan, WrestleMania 18. We're coming into the match, and so you have to understand what's happening in the story leading up to it. Rock is the babyface, Hogan's the heel. But the match is in Toronto. And Toronto is a lifelong WWF and WWE town and city, and grew up loving Hulk Hogan and cheering for Hogan in WrestleMania 6 against the Ultimate Warrior. And the match starts, and the Toronto crowd immediately asserts itself and lets everybody know, most especially Hogan and The Rock, that it has no interest in cheering for Rock and no interest in booing Hogan. And Hogan and The Rock, in that moment, they know what's happening, and they just instantly switch roles. And Hogan becomes the babyface, and Rock becomes the heel, and they put on one of the greatest stories ever told in a pro wrestling ring. And I always say it, when pro wrestling is great, it becomes Shakespeare. Rock goes over, and then the NWO comes out and turns on Hogan, and then Hogan turns on them, and you have Rock and Hogan in the ring, both as baby faces. It is the stuff of legend. Third on my list is the greatest wrestling match in the history of WrestleMania, and for my money, is the greatest American wrestling match ever. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. Not streak versus career in the main event of WrestleMania 26, the first one in WrestleMania 25, where I felt like Michaels was going to win to the point where Michaels super kicks him and covers him, and Taker kicks out, and I had one of those moments where I'm just laughing afterwards. It is the greatest match in the history of WrestleMania, and in my money, from my money and in my estimation, is the greatest American professional wrestling match ever. Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania 25. The last match on my list. And I tweeted at the Kostos on Twitter, what is your Mount Rushmore? And I've gotten a bunch of replies. None of them have listed this match. I'm not going to say it's the best match, because it's not the best pure wrestling match. And you could certainly argue that Rock Hogan tells a better story. My favorite pro wrestling match of all time is the career-ending match between the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage at WrestleMania 7. Warrior wins the match in extremely dramatic fashion, kicks out of 5 Savage top rope elbows, Savage kicks out of the gorilla press, and then Savage ultimately loses on a couple shoulder blocks by the Warrior. Flying shoulder blocks, and Warrior puts his foot on Savage's chest and wins the match. Now, the match itself is great, But what happens afterward is Shakespeare. Sensational Sherry, who is Savage's valet, turns on him for losing her meal ticket, for him losing the match. And Miss Elizabeth, who's sitting ringside, who had the schism with Macho Man when the Mega Powers collided years earlier, comes into the ring and throws Sherry off of him. And Savage realizes what's happened. I have goosebumps right now. And they embrace as Savage's music plays. And there are people literally, not figuratively, literally, crying in the audience as they embrace. Savage enters that match, the dastardly heel, and he walks away from it, the hottest babyface going. Nick Kostos' WrestleMania match Mount Rushmore. Bret Austin, WrestleMania 13. Rock Hogan, WrestleMania 18. HBK Taker, WrestleMania 25. Warrior Savage, WrestleMania 7. Argue with yourselves. We'll take a break, and on the other side, joining us live from Las Vegas to break down WrestleMania and get some sports betting thoughts on the NBA playoffs